compulsory for all stations in Nigeria to only broadcast productions made in Nigeria for products which are produced in Nigeria.
How to make a perfect bowl of love? A perfect blend of taste that brings every ingredient to life. The fusion of different spices. The unique aroma that rejuvenates your senses. The heartwarming deliciousness. And the satisfaction that comes from every bite, which makes you say, I love my Indomie.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who's a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
The Super Eagles of Nigeria will look to stay in pole position in Group C when they take on the Lone Stars of Liberia. Can the Lone Stars of Liberia cause major shockwaves in the African World Cup qualifiers? It's Liberia versus Nigeria on the 13th of November in the African FIFA World Cup qualifier, showing on the network service of the NTA and Wazobia TV from 4:30 p.m. with live radio broadcasts on Cool FM, Wazobia FM, and Nigeria Info. You can also join us online at sporty.com and NPFL TV. The FIFA World Cup qualifiers are proudly brought to you by Bet Niger and supported by MTN, Coca-Cola, and Dettol, proud sponsors of the Super Eagles of Nigeria.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for us to take some business news with the Nigerian Export Promotion Council launching the Domestic Export Warehouse to address supply chain gaps towards increasing non-oil exports. Details of that story with our business desk.
Most times they grow modes and increase in mycotoxin contents. And when mycotoxin contents are increased, definitely when it gets to the country of destination, they are rejected.
Over time, Nigeria has been unable to convert her huge comparative advantage in the processing of agricultural produce in the global market due to supply chain constraints and congestion in ports of entry. There is a turning point for Nigeria as the Nigerian Export Promotion Council launches the Domestic Export Warehouse, approved operators under the public-private partnership model to reduce congestion at the seaports.
The dues are expected to reduce the cost of doing business by MSME export companies. Also serve as a one-stop transit facility terminal.
They will be right in your facilities to make sure they satisfy it okay. and by the time it's leaving your facilities, it's going to bed directly.
We have a logo that we place on that container as well as the vehicle that will take it to the port. And so from the point of that warehouse to the port, there should not be stoppage of that vehicle.
In other business news, the accounting profession remains a veritable platform to facilitate government efficacy in the management of revenues and disbursement of expenditure and sustainable control of cost across government institutions. As the world celebrates 2021 International Accounting Day, the need for professional accountants to uphold ethics of practice which thrives on accountability, accuracy, and good conduct is the focal point of conversation.
Our roles are not just invaluable, but what we do is critical to the growth and development of subnational, national, and international economies.
Well, many thanks, Comfort Amadu, for the business news. Up next on Good Morning Nigeria is the newspaper review. Bayo Atoyebe, newspaper reviewer, is also in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Kesley. Thank you. Good morning, Yusuf.
Welcome, Bayo.
How is Mararaba Nyanya Karu Road now?
Well, it's relatively okay these days. It doesn't be as hectic and bad as last week.
Yes.
Yes. We didn't just make it last week because of, some real serious gridlock. Yes, and that's talking about the army trying to put out.
All the three entry major routes, Nyamararaba, Nyanya Karu, Airport Road, and Kuba, there are no alternative roads.
And
so
that's
once
the major
anything
cause.
happens, you have this long tailback and serious inconveniences.
For sure. We have the newspapers here, I have the leadership. I think, Kingsley, you have the Nation there. Yes. So let me go through the leadership first and then see what it has on its front page this morning. On the leadership, we have right below the masthead, we have some few stories down to the bottom. And then we have collapsed Ikoyi 21-story building, has no insurance cover. Collapsed Ikoyi 21-story building has no insurance cover. And details of that is going to be gotten on page 7 of the leadership newspaper. Justice delayed, concerns over 8,000 pending appeals at Supreme Court. Concerns over 8,000 pending appeals at Supreme Court. Details of that on page 4, and there are two riders under it here. And these are 2010-2021 cases yet to get hearing dates. And then fresh non-time-bound appeals to be heard in 2028. Fresh non-time-bound appeals to be heard in 2028. Now, coming down to the foot of the page, we have some few stories on the right hand side of the page. We have TEDFund approves 6.39 billion naira for 217 research projects. Details on page 10. Anambra Ohaneze urges APC, PDP to accept defeat. Details on page 6. Bandits kill 11. Injure 13 in Katsina, details on page 13. And then on page 23, hunger, theft of soup raises in Enugu. Theft of soup, that is, raises in Enugu. The other stories you have on the leadership newspaper, the front page here, is Senate demands prosecution of terrorist financiers, and the writer is moves against wealthy civil servants. Senate demands prosecution of terrorist financiers and moves against wealthy civil servants. Details on page 4. And finally, on page 6, federal government replaces ERGP with 5-year development plan. FG replaces ERGP with 5-year development plan. Details of that on page 6. Kingsley?
Thank you, Nadabo. We also have the Nation newspaper. Above the name flag, the following headlines. Gunmen killed 22
In Imo, Kaduna and Katsina attacks, Buhari, Ngige, Ohaneze and others greet Soludo. Ozugbo and Uba concede defeat. That's page 2. Ogun, Lagos and Bauchi can't be NDDC member states. Lagos, Ogun and Bauchi can't be NDDC member states. Buhari to French investors, Nigeria economy viable. And below the name flag, CBN plans single-digit loans for manufacturers. IPOB, George frowns at Kano's lawyers for staging walkout. And governors can't back out of Parry Club debt, says Malami. With 2 riders, controversy rages over consultancy fee. AGF, that's Attorney General of the Federation, states paying already. Political solution not ruled out in Igboho's and Kano's cases, says government. And the story here, of course, is attributing that to the Attorney General of the Federation. And then at the foot of the front page, and just below the photograph, showing President Muhammadu Buhari being welcomed by his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, at the Élysée Palace in Paris, in France yesterday. Jigawa Hisba arrests 47, and Federal Executive Council okays 348.7 trillion naira for development plan. Bayo.
Yes, let's start with the story about the president's visit to France. President Muhammadu Buhari has promised to work with France to declare international criminal networks. Speaking while being received at the Palais Élysée, President Muhammadu Buhari said France and Nigeria has strong commitments to peace and security in the Sahel as well as Lake Chad region. He lauded commitment to the fight against terrorism and extremism. Issues to be discussed during the visit by Mr. President range from irregular migration, human trafficking, and transnational criminal networks in Africa and Europe. Areas of interest to be explored include expanding opportunities for French companies, especially smaller ones, to stretch their markets into Nigeria. The Federal Executive Council yesterday approved the 2021-2025 National Development Plan. The National Development Plan has 6 clusters: the economic growth development, infrastructure, public administration, human capital development, social development, as well as regional development. It projects an annual growth rate of 5%. The plan so far is costed to be of the size of 348.7 trillion naira. The public sector component is to contribute 49.7 trillion, which is 14.3%, while the private sector will contribute 298.3 trillion, which is 85.7%. It's deliberately swayed to be a public sector driven economy. Once the NDP has been launched now, the long-term plan of Nigeria, which is Agenda 2050, will be discontinued. Also, the NDP 2021, approved by the Federal Executive Council yesterday, is to succeed the elapsed economic growth plan of 2017 to 2020. As of now, all ministries, departments, and agencies will be required to draw their programs and projects from that development plan. There are concerns about congestion of cases at the Apex Court. The Supreme Court is said to have over 8,000 appeals pending, so much so that apart from political cases, some of the cases now have had to be scheduled and given dates as far forward as 2028. And guess what? By law, the Supreme Court is supposed to have 21 justices, but some retirements have occurred and some vacancies have not been filled. Therefore, the Supreme Court does not have its full complement. At the last count, I think there was about 17 of them now. Presently, there have been 725 appeals over the year 2016, 743 appeals in 2017, 726 were filed afresh in 2018. The Constitution allows many cases to have right of appeal up to the apex court. And this was compounded because there were some political cases that were supposed to have terminated at the Court of Appeal. But recently, due to some amendments by the National Assembly, some of these cases also had the opportunity of going as far as to the apex court. And also, in Ogun State, the Chief Judge of Ogun State has lamented that thieves broke into the court and carried away equipment for virtual sittings. Justice Mosunlola Dikweolu, while inaugurating ICT tools for judges to aid quick dispensation of justice, says that Governor Dapo Abiodun had approved the virtual equipment for her court as a pilot scheme. Some time ago, thieves broke into her court and stole the equipment. They now have to resort to using the Zoom application for virtual sittings. Senate yesterday observed a mini silence to mourn 120 persons murdered by bandits at Gonroyo Market. Senator Ibrahim Gobir had drawn attention of the Senate to extortion by bandits who demand levies between 1 million to 20 million from some villages. He says that failure to meet the demands imposed by these bandits have led to killings in villages. In fact, he added that some bandits have installed their own district village heads in some of the areas. And so I think something needs to be done about that very critically. Internally generated revenue, the National Bureau of Statistics has indicated that 36 states of the Federation and the FCT generated 849.123 billion as internally generated revenue between the first and second quarter, that is between January and June this year. The statistics shows that there was 13.21% growth. In 2020, where the nation was ravaged by COVID-19, what was generated was 612.87 billion. And 2021, it was 398 billion generated in the first quarter and 450 billion in the second quarter. Revenue came mostly from 5 subheads. You'll be surprised to hear this. It came from payee, direct assessment, road taxes, other taxes and revenue from ministries, departments and agencies. Lagos State had the highest, 267 billion. It is followed by the Federal Capital Territory, 69, and Rivers State had 57 billion. In the reverse, Yobe had the least, 4 billion, followed by, in the reverse order, by Taraba, 4.7 billion, and Gombe, 5.4 billion.
Well, important facts emerging there. On the story on the conjunction of cases at the Supreme Court, again draws attention to some of the challenges that we're having with dispensation of justice. Earlier when you were talking about the amendments that were made, I know you were referring to the constitutional amendments that now warrant appeals from governorship election, in the past terminated at the Court of Appeal, but now election petition cases can be appealed right up to the Supreme Court. So that's one. But again, a number of these cases that we deal with have time frames delimited for them. So that's why the Supreme Court, of course, works flat out. The Court of Appeal also works flat out to ensure that those cases are handled tenuously because of the constitutional provision. But it means while they are working on those cases, all other cases will be in abeyance. There are a number of suggestions that have been made in the past. Create, for instance, either regional courts of appeal. We used to have them in the past, like the Western Court of Appeal. And then, just probably also narrow down the number of cases or the types of cases that can go on appeal to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Sometimes you find frivolous appeals finding their way right up to the Supreme Court. And in some cases, these are matters on which the Supreme Court has already made a pronouncement. So why come back again? And if you observe the principle of stare decisis, which is cardinal to have jurisdiction, then why a precedent has already been set, so it's binding on every other court. So why say you want to exercise your right of appeal and then you congest the courts and the matters get lost? But I think it's something for all stakeholders in the justice delivery system to be concerned about and to work hard to ensure that, because if you say there are about 8,000 matters pending, of course, how many panels can you set up in the Supreme Court to deal with those cases? And I'm sure you must have remembered some years ago when the Supreme Court was pressed for time, it could give its decision on the matter, particularly political cases, and then reserve reasons for its judgment to a later date, which is, of course, fine with its practice. But we cannot be dealing with 8,000 cases and then expect that matters will come. There are some issues, of course, ordinarily that could just be handled at below state level, and the fact is that also legal practitioners don't help matters. Some legal practitioners don't help matters. They will say we will exercise our right of appeal, and as you are going upstairs, it's also costly.
And becomes really congested. Most disturbing here is fresh non-time bound appears to be heard in 2028.
Yes, justice delayed.
Justice really delayed, and we're in 2021 now.
Well, the story about 21-story building collapse in Lagos is sad. It's been indicated that there was no insurance over the property. That has serious implication for the developer. Meanwhile, 2 more bodies were recovered from the site of the collapse story, and this had brought the total number of the unfortunate deaths from that development to 45. The survivors are still 15. Meanwhile, identification of bodies have continued at 3 hospitals. 32 families have submitted samples of DNA for possible identification. The Commissioner for Information gave clarification that the integrity tests are yet to be conducted on the other coexisting structure. He also denied that he refused speculation that the 2 other structures are to be demolished. He says it's not true.
Well, that's good, but we shall be discussing that this morning.
That's part of our conversation.
There's a
it's
topic
not just
this morning.
But of course, it's a trigger for it. The other, worrisome issue. I recognize that emotions are still very raw at this time on account of the tragedy that happened at Ikoyi. But as part of the snippets of information that have emerged, there are certain things we can also begin to take a look at and see how things work. Those flats that were taken off plan and under construction were said to have been paid for in hard currency. In this same economy?
It's legal. Foreign currency is not a legal tender in Nigeria.
That's a topic for another day. Thank you so much. Ben Bayo, it's our pleasure to be with us this morning. We'll see you tomorrow again. Thank you so much. Well, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We shall be discussing building collapse on Good Morning Nigeria today. So stay tuned for the details and the conversations as the program unfolds. We'll take a break now.
That is the black swan of the century has actually hit the whole world very hard, even the strongest of economies, and Nigeria was not spared. But due to the proactive stance and steps that the president has taken, we've been able to come out quickly. The president has consistently said we must invest in infrastructure, even as we're investing in human capital, that we must invest in infrastructure, because at the end of the day, that is what will bring about a sustainable economic growth. So the president has given us our directive. He has said you must make sure you pay salaries and pay pensions, but you also make sure that the critical projects of roads, railway, airports, bridges, major infrastructure that are meant to drive the growth of the economy, that we consistently invest in them, even if we have to continue to borrow to do so.
How to make a perfect bowl of love? A perfect blend of taste that brings every ingredient to life. The fusion of different spices. The unique aroma that rejuvenates your senses. The heart-warming deliciousness, and the satisfaction that comes from every bite, which makes you say, I love my Indomie.
In the last 1.5 years or so since the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen massive changes in the way we do things at MPH-CDA. Working with the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, we were able to actually roll out in the first couple of weeks a massive community-based program that looked at how we could quickly mitigate the impacts of COVID-19 in the communities. So we rolled out a training that involved over 220,000 primary healthcare workers all across Nigeria. We're seeing how we've been able to now achieve pre-COVID levels in terms of the routine immunization services. That is really, really impressive, and really my heart goes out to all of the primary healthcare workers. They've done such an amazing job, along of course with all of the health workers that have been in the front line.
The Super Eagles of Nigeria will look to stay in pole position in Group C when they take on the Lone Stars of Liberia. Can the Lone Stars of Liberia cause major shockwaves in the African World Cup qualifiers? And NPFL TV. The FIFA World Cup qualifiers are proudly brought to you by BetNiger and supported by MTN, Coca-Cola and Dettol, proud sponsors of the Super Eagles of Nigeria.
Welcome. It's Good Morning Nigeria, and it's a prompt for our conversation this morning, which is on building collapse in Nigeria. Let's listen to this background report by Kunle Adeyeye.
Building collapse in Nigeria in recent years has remained unabated. Those actively involved in the building process are becoming more agitated with factors like use of substandard building materials, deployment of unsafe but cost-cutting techniques in housing construction, and the lack of professional supervision at various levels of construction process pinpointed as principal causes. The past decade in Nigeria has been described as an era of building collapse. Between 2011 and 2019, over 84 buildings collapsed across Nigeria. Only 21 out of the 84 occurred outside Lagos State. This has undoubtedly made Lagos State the epicenter of building collapse in Nigeria. That of 2019 was terrifying as 43 buildings in different locations across the country caved in. What could be described as the most tragic occurred on November 1, 2021, as a high-rise block of luxury flats under construction in Ikoyi, Lagos State collapsed with scores confirmed dead. Are most of these tragedies preventable? What needs to be done to deliver safe buildings to save lives and ensure input of various professionals in the building process are not circumvented? Does government also need to be more proactive in granting building permits, carrying out periodic unannounced inspection at building sites and visibly punishing defaulters to send a strong message of intolerance for substandard building projects? Appropriate answers from guests on Good Morning Nigeria in a moment.
Thank you very much, Kunle Adeyeye, for that background. With us in the studios now to discuss this subject matter, let's welcome Ibrahim Abu, who is an experienced civil structural engineering consultant based here in the Federal Capital Territory. Engineer Abu, pleasure to have you this morning.
Good morning, viewers.
Also here with us in the studios is Dr. Taufik Raimi, a real estate developer and construction development expert. Dr. Raimi, delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you very much, and good to be here. Good morning, Nigeria.
And also with us in the studio right here is, Builder Muhammad Maiwali Madiko, Deputy Director of Building Inspectorate, Department of Development Control, FCT. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you. And also joining us via Zoom from the UK is Engineer Kashim Ali, former Koren President and former Nigerian Society of Engineers President. Welcome to Good Morning, Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
All right, gentlemen, a pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning. Let's begin with Engineer Kashim Ali, former Korean president, who's a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. And I recall some years past when there was some structural failure in Uyo, that's the capital of Akwa Ibom. We also had a conversation around this, and there was supposed to have been some report prepared by a team of experts, but details of which one is not familiar with. But Engineer Kashim Ali, I mean, tell us, the frequency of structural failures of buildings in Nigeria, it's one that just sometimes creates the impression that either we have no rules, we have no standards, or we have no engineers.
Kingsley, you can't be far from the truth. In fact, it's most embarrassing to us, particularly practitioners, that with all the skills we have, and that this is happening in our own country, and at this time, when the world has moved on, where Nigerians are involved in the design and construction of high-rise buildings around the world. So it's so shameful. But we have found this as our own case because there's so much of impunity. There's so much of impunity in our country, honestly. You know, after this particular one happened, I was reviewing some statements I heard on the social media, and I had to take my time to even watch some videos that I was referred to, where the proprietor of this project was making some rather anatomic statements, in fact, very indictive statements, but from a position of ignorance, because you can only give what you have. You can't be an engineer, for instance, and mark the script of a journalist. It's nonsensical. So he was making judgments that engineers in Nigeria are into theory, that before, when he came in here, he was always obeying the consultants. They realized that most of their decisions are based on book. And what is wrong with that? Not anything not scripted is not what they want. That is all the things that we know in this world that we rely on are things that have references. So anything that has no reference certainly is meaningless. It's just there. So, but I don't know why we find it so easy to disobey laws in Nigeria and get away with them. Even now, you see, it's so embarrassing the way this thing has happened. They said the property was owned by a company. In other civilized societies, the company will come and create a desk where people will make inquiries as to how many people are, because it's a regimented area, they have gates. So you should know who is coming into your site and who is going out. Normally, they should have records. They should have been a desk to say, these are the people on this site, these are the people trapped, these are this. Up to today, there's no desk formed by the company. There's no insurance coming in to intervene. All this work that's being done by Lagos State government should normally be done by the company and an insurance firm, supervised by the government. But somehow the government itself, I don't know for whatever reason, whether they have more than official interest, are heavily engaged and making statements right, left, and center. And without even looking at our laws, because this is an engineering infrastructure that has collapsed. By law, current law, amended act, gives the power to current to conduct an investigation. No reference has even been made to current. They went and created one committee there with an architect as a chairman and lawyers and everything, without reference to the law. But of course, thankfully, the current president has instituted a proper panel now that will go and investigate and report to the government, because the report of the current will go to the federal government. They will deliberate on it. But by and large, it is a shame. We feel very, very embarrassed. If I am here now, and I'm ashamed to talk about it, because it's so belittling. But because you keep saying we're not involved, we're not involved. Look at these signposts on that site, the only telephone numbers. And somebody who tried to investigate, check the numbers, they all go to the same person. All the numbers for the consultant, for everybody, because the original consultant had withdrawn. So these are the kind of things, this impunity. And I want to assure Nigeria, it has nothing to do with the integrity of Nigerian engineers. It has nothing to do with their capacity. It has nothing to do with the quality of education of engineering education in Nigeria. Truly, if Nigerian engineers were involved, that structure will not come down. Even if it was going to 50 floors. But they would have ensured, like those other consultants ensure that the laws were obeyed.
Oh, thank you so much, Kashim Ali. You've raised some vital points there, but basically and most importantly is the issue of impunity, which is the bane of the whole thing here. But before we really go deep into discussing impunity in this case, let's hear from Ibrahim Abu, a civil and structural engineer, and of course a consultant for that matter. I mean, just like my colleague earlier put, it's really disturbing. And that has been alluded to by almost everybody else watching developments in Nigeria, especially about building collapse. As a civil and structural engineer, and of course a consultant in that regard, how too painful is this development?
Thank you very much. Usually when there is a collapse like this, it's usually from a multiple of factors. One factor is this use of substandard materials. When we have engineers on a project, usually there will be engineers for the consulting firm supervising the project, and then there will be engineers and professionals, the architects, the quantity surveyors, also on the contractor side. So usually in the building industry, there is a system of check and balance, where the developer gives the job to a contractor, and then there is a consulting engineer. So because there are so many parties involved now, there is a system of check and balance. So we, especially when we are dealing with those projects that are from 2-3 stories above, we have to make sure that these systems are in place. This situation where you have a developer being the contractor, being the consultant, is already a problem because these objectives as wearing different caps are not aligned. So it's going to be a problem. So therefore we say...
How is it a problem?
Yes, because, okay, now, for example, the objective of a developer is to try to develop the project at the lowest possible cost, right? The objective of a contractor is trying to make profit. Now, the objective of a consultant, because he has to protect his name, is to make sure that the building is built of the highest quality. Because if anything happens, the first person that will be called upon will be the consulting firms that are supervising the project. But in a situation where the developer is the contractor and probably has sacked the consultants and is now acting as a consultant, then the system of check and balance is not there anymore. And that's where the problem comes in.
Oh, okay, well, thank you, Ibrahim Abu. We will return to you. Let's bring in now Dr. Taufik Raimi, real estate developer and construction development expert. Just let us have your comments on the high incidence of building failures in different parts of the country, of course, capped by the high rise that came down in Ikoyi last week.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to commiserate with the families of those who lost their life in the Ikoyi building collapse. I sympathize not just with the families, but also with the government of Lagos State, Nigerian as a country, and all of us, even the professional bodies, and everybody is concerned. But be that as it may, it's very disheartening that most often time, this is all we seem to have been doing over the past years. Once there's a building collapse or a project failure, we all cry as much as possible. And after some time, it's as if we are awaiting another incident before we can come to talk about it again or take action. It's unfortunate Record has it that in the last 7 years in Lagos State alone, about 213 lives have been lost to building collapse. It's also on record that about 145 building collapse have occurred within a space of 13 years. That's between 2008 and then 2021. We are talking of colossal loss of lives, investment going down the drain, and even reputation for not only our industry, the building and construction industry, but even for Nigeria at large. The consequences of building collapse, just as what we have in Lagos State recently, cannot be overemphasized. But it is not limited to Lagos State, as we have already established. In Abuja, on July 28, to be precise, 2008, a building collapsed in Utako, Jabi district, within the center of FCT. This building was ongoing. It was to deliver over 700 shops, about the largest single development ongoing at the time. Do you know what? Over 70 lives were lost here in Abuja. To hard sort to injury, this particular incident I mentioned happened when 54 ministers of environment and urban development, of course, in Africa, were holding an important conference in Transcom Hotel, and they just woke up to hear that a building has collapsed in Abuja. Look at the image that has created even for the country. The then Minister of FCT, Dr. Umar Modibo, visited the site immediately, and you know what he did? Just like what we are always used to. He frowned at flagrant disregard to using the development control approval given to that particular developer. And immediately he suspended 2 of his top executives at the development control. That decision was highly welcome. Just like the Ikoyi saga, you notice that the governor of Ikoyi, His Excellency,
Governor of Lagos.
Governor of Lagos, sorry, His Excellency, Sawolu, has also suspended the head of the building department who was supposed to be monitoring, supervising, and controlling these incidents. So what is established here is that, one, incidences of building collapse have continued. Why has this been? I only gave an indication of, after the panel in Abuja that I mentioned was set up, of course the minister then set up a panel. That was about the last we had. So I would see that the problem of building collapse is what I contextualize as ROI. What do I mean by ROI? I do not mean return on investment. I mean that we have the problem emanating from the regulators, that is the government. We have the problem connecting the operators, that is everyone connected to development in the private sector, that is the developer, the contractor, the building materials, suppliers and manufacturers, the workers that work in there, the professional body, the consultant, everybody. I put them as part of the causes or who are to be blamed for this. I mean that the investing public, the home buyers, the onlookers, the research institute, everyone has something to do. So that's why for me, as a real estate developer and as a consultant, as a project manager, as a facility manager, having seen this happening over and over again for the last almost 30 years of my practice in this industry. I'm a quantity surveyor by background, so I belong to the industry. I'm not an outsider. I have also seen this happening over time. So I have seen that this problem, instead of blaming the engineers as being the cause, or developer has been the cause, or government has been the cause because of lack of enforcement or weak, I want us to look at how can we solve this problem in an holistic dimension. And that is why I've contextualized the problem of building collapse in Nigeria under what I call ROI. the regulator, the operators, and the investing public. Thank you.
But still on that, Taufik, you really mentioned, this issue of ROI, and that's everybody's involved there.
Yes.
Because even the public, those in the environment and even the onlookers, they are really investing in that because they may be part of that building that is coming up. But it seems as if there is really a problem with that because the developer is the person at the center of the show. He initiates everything. He starts, he lays the first block by having to think of the idea in the first place and then going through to get those that are involved in order to actualize these very ideas. And he should be in the know of who are supposed to be part of this. Just like, Ibrahim Abu said, some developers tend to assume so many roles instead of just taking their own position as developers. Don't you think the developer, takes the chunk of the blame in this regard?
Thank you very much. That's very important. You see, the concept of ROI is for us to look at the multiplicity, the dimension, and holistic dimension of the problem. It's true, in real estate development, the real estate developer is the primary, what I would call first line charge when an incident of this nature occurred. But beyond of course, initiate the idea. The problem of building collapse does not only happen until when the building itself has collapsed. What of from the design stage? Who gave the approval for this development? In the last, since November 1st, when this incident in the Ikoyi occurred, we've had different different fashions from even the government of Lagos State. Part of the officers of the Lagos State government said they approved 15-story. In another leg, we had that it is 21-story. You could see, even from the government side. Who gave the approval? Till today, we have not seen any paper even published that, look at what we approve, because approval is conveyed by conveyance to the developer, by the government, the regulator. Two, we are talking about engineers who are not involved. You see, it's very quick. It's very easy to say the engineer on that project had resigned, which is highly commendable. Very commendable if that truly happened. But was it sent to the government? Was the public also aware? We hold responsibility to this country. We hold responsibility to lives that are lost. We hold responsibility to investment that have gone down the drain. Okay, the developer also supposed to have what I call resource document, like how is going to go about developing the place. Were there quantity surveyors on that project who are supposed to advise on the cost of the development? Some developer, of course, I'm not holding forth for developer. I am one. But the point I'm establishing is that we have to elevate this conversation beyond blame game, beyond removing ourselves. Okay, if an engineer was never involved in that project, correct that is very good. They are doing a lot of activities is being performed by that professional body. Was there at any time that Koren as a body or NC, Nigerian Society of Engineers, also identified some projects that do not have members? In Abuja, I did a study about a year ago or two, and I found that most projects don't even have project billboard like we used to have in the early 90s, where you can really say this is the name of the project developer or the contractor. These are the consultant on the project. Gone are the days that when you see a particular project being executed here in Abuja, and I believe in many other major cities in Nigeria, you will see project billboard. From the project billboard itself, you could have a sense of the capacity of people that are involved. And so even after this program, I also even believe that press have a stake in this matter. That's why I said you are also part of the public. Because after this conversation, maybe a week or two, maybe because of so many negative things that are happening in our country, we seem to go to bed. I do not want that happening again. And that is why I have brought about the idea that beyond talking, of course, talking is good, but they say it's cheap. But beyond talking, let's begin now from now on to take action. If development control is not giving approval at time, if development control have given approval but it's not being followed, does development control body, that's on the part of government, even have the capacity also to supervise projects of that caliber? You know, there are various dimensions. So we have to look at the various dimensions, because it's by taking an holistic perspective that we can really come out of this problem.
I'm not really trying to, bother you so much on this. I really want us to establish this very foundation so much so that we'll be able to at least have an inroad in it. When I said earlier on that the developer initiates and then he takes control and takes charge, because it is his investment. So when the other aspects or other, sections and sectors and people involved are not properly placed in their own rightful places, I think a developer should be the first to raise the alarm and even hold the building or even hold the construction, or go further to even, seek, some attention of those concerned authorities, because it is his investment that is going down the drain. Not forget about the fact that everybody is involved, but we'll talk about that much later when we move on this program. Mai Walima, how do you feel about these developments in this country, especially this building collapse? It's a builder, it's not really palatable, especially when lives are lost.
Really, it is not palatable. And it is not good for a nation to be experiencing this time without number. Really, we know the causes of building collapse are so numerous, but under three broadened heads, we can discuss them. We have design errors, in most cases, which actually cause building collapse. We also have construction errors. Then we have what we refer to as actually force majeure. The design errors are normally from the designers. In the construction industry, we know we have the designers, we have the architects, we have the structural engineers, the electrical engineers, the mechanical, they all present their designs. And if we have those errors, that will also actually emanate during construction. Precisely some of the design errors in structural engineering, you can have just a change of unit, conversion of unit. That may affect the loading system, which will actually cause a problem during construction. So
explain that to our viewers, please.
Yes.
Break it down.
Okay, for example, if you have maybe a loading that is in kilonewton, and you now change it to either newton or so, without specifying exactly what is required, that if one will take that and make use of it on the site, it may actually affect the loading system. And again, in the construction errors, that is where you have the poor workmanship, the low quality actually material, and so many others during construction. This also constitutes to building collapse. Then we have actually force majeure, which can be a kind of slides, if you have slides, or if you have earthquake, and the rest of them. These are also causes of actually building failures or building actually collapse. All these, we need to look at them critically. That's why in a situation like this, where we have this type of collapse in Lagos, there must be an extensive study of the root causes. It could be from the design. And if it is from the design, it is the designers who will take the responsibility. And if it is construction errors, those who are responsible for construction are supposed to take the blame. And that's why it is always important for every profession to be allowed to do its work. A builder who is supposed to be on site, who is supposed to monitor building production, should be held responsible if you have this kind of things, if he's really employed and is given the mandate to exercise his rights. Because he is supposed to manage building production, a registered builder. And that's why we must re-emphasize at all times that the builder, a registered builder, should always be on site. That is, every site must have, a registered builder employed on that site to manage that, so that at least we can have somebody who is responsible to take in the liability of that production. Otherwise, it will be just a blame game. The architect will say, no, my design is okay. Structural engineer may also claim his design is okay, and the rest of it. So you'll hardly find a person whom you will actually hang the blame on.
When you say builder here, who are you referring to in the built environment?
Yes, we have a registered builder. Building is a profession also in the built environment. He's supposed to harmonize the design of all the designers, the architect, the structural engineer, the electrical, the mechanical, and bring the building to reality. He's saddled with the responsibility of production to come up with the building. So he harmonizes the whole designs.
Can we refer to him as the supervisor of the project, as the case may be? How does it look like? Because it seems a little bit confusing.
No, it's not confusing. The only thing is people do not always seem to understand the role of a builder. But that is what he's supposed to do. He is trained to know the mechanism of building in general. The structural, the architectural, electrical, mechanical, everything. So he's supposed to be on the site, supervising the whole of the building production.
Okay, there's Muhammad Diko. There's a point that I would like you to further clarify. You mentioned 3 causative factors, yes, any one or more, yeah, for structural failures: design errors, construction errors, and force majeure. Yes. Let's deal with design errors. Yes. We hear sometimes mega projects do fail because of design errors. But if there is a design error from the architect or from the structural civil engineer, who is supposed to apprehend it? Because your architectural drawings are supposed to be sent, yes, for approval. Yes. Your civil structural drawings are also supposed to be sent for approval. Yes. And in some cases, I hear that M&E drawings, that's mechanical and electrical, people say, no, don't worry. But they are also supposed to also go, sure, for approval. So yes, at what point can design errors be apprehended, and by whom?
Good. We have the actually approving authority, which here in Abuja, we have the building, the Department of Development Control. What we expect when you come to open your file, we'll need your title document, that is either the right of O or the C of O. Then you will come along with your designs, architectural, structural, electrical, mechanical, and your SAR, that's the site assessment report. It will all be inclusive in your submission. Then you obtain a form, you fill. Then the designs will actually undergo scrutiny by the various professionals domiciled in the department. The structural engineer will look at the structural calculation, look at the design. If it is adequate, fine. If there are shortfalls, the developer or the intending developer will be invited to actually put that in order. So also is the architectural and the electrical and mechanical. So it is checked by the approving authority, here the development control. And when it passes all that actual scrutiny, then a developer will have a permit. He will be issued a permit after paying all the necessary fees. He will be given the permit. And that is the first stage. After that first stage, we have the implementation stage, which is the building inspectorate. They are in charge of physical development. And our concern in building inspectorate is to make sure that strength and stability is obtained in building production, because that is the most important thing. The engineers are concerned about safety, and safety lies in the production. We make sure that whatever is designed, columns, beams, the slabs are all produced the way it is actually designed. So in building inspectorate, we take the charge of ensuring that that safety and that strength is actually obtained. That is how it is done.
How rigorous are these processes? Because sometimes, just by anecdotal evidence, that's to say what people, stories you hear, no, it's our friend is in that office, so we work on it, we have submitted it, or a big friend calls him, say, look, my architect and engineers, they have submitted my drawings to you, what is the problem? So no problem, sir, we will handle it. So how rigorous are these processes? Are the processes dispassionate? That's to say, regardless of who you are, we are dealing with the code drawings and figures and then seeing whether or not, they meet the required standards.
Of course, that is what we do with development control. If you decide to pass any file which is not properly scrutinized by the various professionals, you will take the blame when it happens. We have seen how sanctions are placed on those who try to do that games. Some they missed. In fact, they lost their jobs. Those were suspended in the past. So everyone is on his toes to do the right thing.
Okay, thank you, Mewalima. Let's hear from Engineer Kashim Ali in the UK. Engineer Kashim, I've listened to various opinions here about, building collapse and then what the reasons are to some extent. And of course, you too mentioned some of the reasons earlier on at the beginning of this program. Coren and the NSA, the Nigerian Society of Engineers, play a very, very critical role in this regard, talking about their input into the construction of whatever thing it is in this country. And of course, your members are very crucial in trying to actualize, the dreams of developers and owners of buildings and whatever you have out there. How active has Coren been in trying to see to it that these building collapse over the years, have sent a message to this organization or to this, body that you as a body should try as much as possible to ensure that your members live to the ethics of their profession and accept or take responsibility for whatever wrong or fault that may come up. An example is the issue of the engineers that, backed out of the construction in the Ikoyi sometimes in 2020, if the records were straight. That was a good development. But with this kind of development, if it has been like this all the while, one would think that developers and of course anybody engaging your member would have at least thought twice about the fact that quality it is.
Thank you very much. Let me take you back briefly what Mr. Taufik talked about the collapse structure in Abuja. Incidentally, I had the privilege of being the chair of that investigating panel. He said that nothing happened, something happened. I remember we indicted 13 personnel of the Department of Government Control and they were so punished. Thereafter, a secondary panel was set up. I was also a member with late Philip Yoshe as chair to restructure the government control. So the structure they have in the government control today is the outcome of that work. And what we did was to say people should take responsibility. In the professional work, you have to take responsibility for your own action. Nobody takes it for you. So if you bring in a structural drawing, let the structural engineer determine the suitability or otherwise of the structure, not a town planner. M&E should be determined by an M&E personnel, and architectural should be done and by an architect. So we did that. So the report didn't go just on that like that. Then, again, when this happens, the essence of investigation is to identify culprits. So to say we should not blame, this is the time to blame. Not only to blame, to make progress and punish those who have been blamed, unless they can prove that they are not guilty. And that has happened over the years. In fact, if you recall, there was this synagogue case. The thing is still in court. But when, no matter how long it takes, when it comes out, people will be punished. They cannot go free. You can't just do mess up people's life and then you think you can go free. Even God will not forgive those who are responsible for that. So that does happen. So quite often, some engineers with integrity pull out of project, and many cases they have pulled out. It's not this case alone. Even in, I don't want to mention, there's one hotel in Abuja early in the early 90s that a young engineer was engaged as a structural engineer to do some work for them. He was doing it, they were going against his instructions, and he wrote a letter and pulled out. A few weeks after, the structure also came down. And of course, when it came down, he had a letter to show. I agree with him that the engineers on the Ikoyi project didn't appear to have acted well because, but that will come out in the course of investigation. After writing to the client that they were pulling out, they have a responsibility to inform their own professional body, especially, or their regulator, to say, look, these are the issues, and because of that, we're pulling out. So the current would have, for instance, taken it up with the Lagos State government to say, look, this is the situation, I have to seal that site. In any case, but it will seem as if they informed the Lagos State government, because the Lagos State government, Lagos authority, actually sealed the site. But the question is, who opened that site after it was sealed? What was done before the reopening? And all those things that happen, that is where impunity comes in. And some people also, we act as if we're above the law. Kingsley made reference to even what they do in the well control, where if you submit your drawing, you can call someone and say, my drawings are there, I hope you go through them quickly and send. And somebody can say, yes, sir. But the person saying yes, sir, has a responsibility to do due diligence. Because in the event of that structure coming up, because of the new structure in the well control now, they will trace it to the person who gave the approval. So the person who gave the approval that the structure was, the design was adequate, will take responsibility for that and will be punished. The current law is very straightforward. The act is straightforward. You can't go free, because when this whole thing is over now, they will come, there's an investigation panel that will first of all investigate. After the general investigation, individuals will be investigated for their roles. Then they will establish what the lawyers call prima facie case. When that is established, the matter will go to the tribunal. The tribunal is well constituted by law. The Supreme Court Justice of Nigeria, the Chief Judge, normally constitutes the tribunal. And the tribunal is headed by the President of Current, and it has a legal assessor. Presently, we have an SA and Fagbemi as a legal assessor for Current Tribunal. So they'll sit down and deal with them. They have dealt with some people recently. So that why often the things that come around this engineering practice are not, except when collapses happen like this, they are not things that are easily so newsworthy. It's not like a doctor kills somebody and then you are bringing it up, it will be sensational. Or a lawyer collected somebody's money and he lost a case and it's sensational. But when somebody is involved in unethical practice in engineering, the trial comes on. Trials are always going on once in a while, and people are punished. I recall as president, I sentenced a friend. The pain was too much for him. He had an accident and died the same day. I cried for him because he was my friend, but I had a decision to take and I took the decision. So that is how it is. So to say we will not blame, we must blame, because that's how societies survive. In all the developed countries, even if you are the leader of the country, if you are a prime minister, for instance, in this country, and you do anything illegal, they'll try you, and you go to jail. If you should go to jail, or you bet you will be punished. And we must accept that, because we cannot just choose to select. You can't choose what you do in Nigeria. Today, this has happened. It happened in Akwa Ibom. The Akwa Ibom governor almost lost his life. But the same government of Akwa Ibom covered up that report. They refused to bring it out. They refused to allow intervention and everything. The same thing is happening in Lagos. So, but the current amended law now does not even require us to worry about that. The current has set up his committee. They will do, it's headed by the president of the Association of Consulting Engineering in Nigeria, and they are going to be and some senior engineers. They will do investigation. They will report to Koren. Koren will identify the individuals fingered, and they'll be tried. The report will be sent to the federal government of Nigeria for those other people that cannot be held by Koren. But this time around, something will happen. Certainly, something will happen. We cannot say we will not blame. We must blame. And when people refuse to use professionals to do their work, we must also identify them and call them out, because it's just the height of recklessness for anybody to think that you can just be alone to yourself. Look at what has happened now. There's a point I made, and I want to reiterate it. That project ahead, that a unit costs about $650,000 US. That's about almost 300 million naira. People's investment. Some people have died because of the trauma of the collapse. There are some people who are dying now because maybe they sold buildings, sold family property to invest. They are dying. Who is catering for them? If in any other society, they would have identified all those who invested, and there should be some form of counseling going on now for them. Nobody is doing that. No insurance is talking to them. They are not sure how they will get their money back. All those things are issues. This is also a disaster to our nation in terms of economy. People who are supposed to earn money are not earning money. Those who, some of them have even been killed. And there's no arrangement. They are just being taken. They say they ask people to go to the hospitals and to confirm that their family members are dead. They say those who are living should go to general hospital. Those who think theirs are dead should go to IDH hospital. And if you go there, identify, then the hospital will find a way of releasing the corpses to you, and you go and bury. Who does that? Who does that? Why is life so meaningless to us? So that is why we must investigate. And investigate we must. Because for every person who is involved, we must blame. We cannot stop blaming. But if those people don't do blame, then they should not do the wrong things. That's my intervention for now.
Engineer Kashim Ali, thank you very much. I think, Nadabo, when we say blame, blame is not merely say, no, you did this, Nadabo, you did this, Kingsley, you did this. It must be accompanied, of course, by sanctions.
Yeah, sure.
And you have a broad range, of sanctions for professional negligence, for loss. I gave the example, gentlemen. When incidents like this happen, emotions are still very raw. We were discussing newspaper reviews some days ago.
Yeah.
I cited, what happened? If there's unlawful death or wrongful death, in certain circumstances, the families can sue you. Yeah. They can't sue you. I mean, these are matters, sometimes, we just go quietly, bury our dead, and then that is the end of the matter. Let's come back to Ibrahim Abu. Ibrahim Abu, well, in a sense, you can see we are taking from the paradigm proposed by Dr. Taufik Raimi as well as DICO with regard to ROI and then the constitutive factors of building collapse. We've talked about aspects of the regulatory. We'll still return to that. But there's something about the operators. And you can also link them also to the investors. Why is it that in Nigeria, there isn't what you may refer to as professional jealousy? Instead, on some construction sites, you find role combination. An architect will be playing the role of an engineer. He will be playing the role of a builder. He will be playing the role of all kinds of things. I don't know, sometimes maybe they also play the role of lawyers, So, or an engineer will purport to be altering architectural designs or purporting all kinds of things that you don't have professionals sticking to their specified and qualified roles. Why is that so?
I think that, based on what Engineer Kasim said just a little bit earlier, that's part of the thing that has happened in the development control, where they've reformed the development control so that architects will take responsibility for their work, the engineers will take responsibility for their work, the M&E will take responsibility for their work. So typically on a building project, we have the project signboard. And on the project signboard, you're supposed to have the named architect, the named engineer, the named M&E, the named QS, and then the contractor doing the project. Usually, he was talking about the builder. The builder is usually on the contractor side, responsible for the building of ensuring that the ideas or the designs of the architects and the engineers are executed on the ground. So that system of check and balance is very important. Now, if you recall what happened, or what is reported to have happened in this Lagos situation, the engineer resigned from the project and asked that his name be removed from the project signboard. Immediately that is done, then automatically there will be a gap. And that's where what Taufik said about the general public being involved is also important. Because if the general public realize, because development control may not, even as much as they try to visit all the nooks and crannies, sometimes they may not be aware that such has taken place. And then the general public will now report that this project, there's no engineer on site. Or even the Koren itself on their surveillance trip, they will discover, why is there no engineer on the site? And inform the development control. Development control can now issue a stop work order and then reconcile what the situation is. One thing again, why we say let there be division of labor on the project, in the project team is the design, for example, like he was saying, for example, there could be mistake in design. Typically, when you have a consulting firm, you have various levels of engineers, approving, or let me say, experienced engineers. Typically, the young engineer will start the design, and then when he finishes the design, he sends it to a more senior engineer who checks it. And then when it's checked by the more senior engineer, then the partner or the most senior consultant in the firm, or one of the most senior consultants, will now pass the drawing. So that makes sure that if there is a mistake along the line, because of the experience of the partner, just by looking at the drawing, you can say, this is not appearing, this what's going on. And that is not